Have you ever wondered about the invisible force unleashed by a nuclear event? Nuclear radiation, a release of energy from atomic nuclei, is something we can't see, taste, or smell, but its effects can be devastating and long. While nuclear technology has its benefits, the potential for disaster looms large. Today, we're going to take a serious look at what happens when things go wrong, exploring the profound impact of nuclear radiation on human health and our planet. Imagine being exposed to a high dose of radiation, like in the immediate aftermath of a nuclear accident. The first thing you'd likely experience is acute radiation sickness. Within hours, or even minutes, nausea, vomiting, and fatigue would set in. This is the body's initial, violent reaction to cellular damage. As the dose increases, the symptoms worsen. You might experience severe skin burns, similar to extreme sunburns, that blister and peel away. Internally, the damage is even more catastrophic. The radiation attacks rapidly dividing cells, which is why your bone marrow, the factory for your blood cells, is one of the first and hardest hit targets. This leads to a collapse of your immune system, making you incredibly vulnerable to infections. Your gastrointestinal tract lining is also destroyed, leading to severe internal bleeding and an inability to absorb nutrients. At very high exposures, the central nervous system is damaged, resulting in seizures, coma, and ultimately, death within days or even hours. It's a truly horrifying ordeal, a complete systemic breakdown of the human body caused by an invisible assault. But the danger doesn't end if you survive the initial exposure. The long-term health effects of nuclear radiation are just as terrifying, silently ticking away for years or even decades. The most well-known long-term consequence is an increased risk of cancer. Radiation damages the DNA within our cells. While our bodies have repair mechanisms, sometimes the damage is too extensive or is repaired incorrectly, leading to mutations. These mutations can cause cells to grow uncontrollably, resulting in various forms of cancer. Thyroid cancer is particularly common after exposure to radioactive iodine, a frequent byproduct of nuclear feed. Leukemia, or cancer of the blood, also sees a significant spike in exposed populations. The risk is cumulative and often dose-dependent, meaning the more radiation you're exposed to, the higher your chances of developing cancer later in life. Beyond cancer, the genetic legacy of radiation exposure is a grave concern. When radiation damages the DNA and reproductive cell sperm and exit, can lead to genetic mutations that are passed down to future generations. This can result in an increased incidence of birth defects and hereditary diseases in the children and even grandchildren of those exposed. Imagine a silent poison not only harming you but also casting a shadow over the health of your descendants. The psychological toll is another critical long-term effect. Survivors of nuclear incidents often suffer from severe post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety, and depression. They live with a constant fear of developing cancer, the grief of losing loved ones, and the social stigma that can come with being a survivor. This mental health crisis is a profound, yet often overlooked, part of the radiation disaster narrative. If you or someone you know is struggling, please remember that seeking professional help is a sign of strength. The impact of nuclear radiation extends far beyond human health, poisoning the very environment we depend on. When a nuclear disaster occurs, radioactive particles are released into the atmosphere and can travel thousands of miles on wind currents before settling back to Earth as fallout. This fallout contaminates everything it touches: the air we breathe, the water we drink, and the soil where we grow our food. Radioactive isotopes like cesium-137 and strontium-90 can persist in the environment for decades, even centuries. They seep into the ground, are absorbed by plants, and enter the food chain. An animal grazes on contaminated grass, and then a predator eats that animal, concentrating the radiation at each step. This process, called biomagnification, means that animals at the top of the food chain, including humans, can accumulate dangerous levels of radioactive material in their bodies. Even if the initial environmental contamination seems low, this contamination creates vast, uninhabitable areas known as exclusion zones. Ecosystems within these zones are thrown into chaos. While some studies have surprisingly shown wildlife returning to these human-free areas, many species suffer from higher mortality rates, lower reproductive success, and increased genetic mutations. Forests and plant life are also deeply affected. In the area around Chernobyl, for example, a patch of pine trees turned a ginger-brown color and died shortly after the disaster, earning the name the Red Forest. Even today, the decomposers in the soil, like fungi and microbes, are less effective at breaking down dead organic matter, leading to a thick layer of radioactive leaf litter on the forest floor, a ticking time bomb that could be released again in a forest fire. Cleaning up this widespread contamination is a monumental, if not impossible, task, leaving a toxic legacy for countless generations. To understand the real-world scale of this devastation, we only need to look at history. The Chernobyl disaster in 1986 is the most infamous example. A catastrophic explosion and fire at the nuclear power plant released a massive cloud of radioactive material that spread across Europe. An exclusion zone of over 1,000 square miles remains largely uninhabitable to this day. Thousands of cleanup workers, known as liquidators, received high doses of radiation, leading to countless deaths and long-term health problems. Cases of thyroid cancer in children in the region skyrocketed in the years following the accident. The social and economic disruption was immense, displacing hundreds of thousands of people from their homes forever. More recently, the 2011 Fukushima Daiichi nuclear disaster in Japan, triggered by a massive earthquake and tsunami, provided another stark reminder of the dangers. Although the immediate death toll from radiation was not high, the event forced the evacuation of over 150,000 residents and resulted in the contamination of a huge area of land in the Pacific Ocean. The cleanup process is expected to take decades and cost hundreds of billions of dollars. Both Chernobyl and Fukushima stand as powerful testaments to the far-reaching and enduring consequences of nuclear radiation. They show us that the effects are not just medical or environmental. They are deeply social, psychological, and economic, tearing apart communities and leaving scars on the landscape and its people for centuries. In summary, the impact of a major nuclear radiation release is nothing short of catastrophic, from the immediate, brutal effects of acute radiation sickness to the silent, long-term threats of cancer and genetic damage. The toll on human life is immense. The environment suffers just as severely, with long-lasting contamination of air, water, and soil that disrupts entire ecosystems and poisons the food chain. The lessons from Chernobyl and Fukushima are clear. Nuclear radiation unleashes a chain of destruction that is incredibly difficult to contain and whose consequences echo through generations. It's a stark reminder of the immense responsibility that comes with harnessing the power of the atom. Thank you for watching. If you found this video informative, please like, share, and subscribe for more content that explores the critical issues shaping our world. Stay curious and stay safe.